Stop us if you've heard this one before. Tonight we're discussing edit funds. Mayor Terry Seitz joins us for that discussion. You have a strategic plan you've laid out.
It's the mayor's responsibility by state law to lay out the projection use of edit funds. Generally for during the budget cycle of the year, you lay out a year or two in advance, and then that's presented to the county auditor. It's also the mayor's requirement to be able to move around those funds during the year and utilize appropriated dollars in any way that is appropriate for those dollars to be used, because it's ultimately economic development income tax. Essentially, for cities of Jasper, we don't want to look at our property taxes, which are capped. We don't want to have referendums to raise those property tax caps, but we want to look at our economic development income revenue, which comes from a tax that's already in place, and to say, how can we sustain that use of that fund, not raise it, not change it, which we don't have the ability to do as a city. That's done by a county, and we're not asking for that. But to take those monies, invest them in Jasper, and ultimately what we would hope that we would have more workers in Jasper to gain more edit revenue. And that's what economic development income tax is called, edit tax. And ultimately to be able to use that. So it's a one fund we feel you could invest in, and it's pretty broad in nature. Bradford, most people don't know, we have roughly a $1.8 to $1.9 million of annual edit revenue. We budget far below that. Of what we budget, $625,000 goes to streets and sidewalks every year. We are investing in operational and infrastructure uses in Jasper with our edit fund. I'd like to see you looking at the edit funds, both in our reserves and our future revenues, investing them more in what I call the projects we've identified in our planning and development. We're now ready to really leverage edit to make those projects work. Ultimately, it's not my decision as far as which project or how many we do or at what level we do. That's why we have boards. That's what we have elected officials for. But it's me, and my job as mayor, to put the plan out there, the strategy for saying, here's edit funds, here's how we implement them. And ultimately, I think that's what we did today.
So a lot of discussion will ensue about this, and some of it centers around the idea of how the city budgets and so forth. You are looking for more of a long-term plan with edit, obviously. So explain your position.
Well, ultimately, I believe the budgeting process in the city, I would say, generally occurs once a year. And I'm not talking in the clerk treasurer's office or even the mayor's office, but we generally consider budget once a year unless we need money or unless there's a project. My plan that I use with the Economic Development Fund is to lay out some strategies for here's how the funds could be used for this project or that project. Here's how we could leverage these funds, if we so desire, to do an economic development bond, which we did for the sports complex. How do we know we have enough money to do that? Well, if we just look at it on a project-by-project basis or an as-needed basis, we fail. I want to look at long-term forecasting and trending, and I need to have the clerk treasurer's office and elected officials on board with me, because we have to look at that, not just because the property tax fund, the general fund's tighter because of capping, but because we can do better things other than building up massive reserves. At the end of this year, we're forecasted, according to the clerk treasurer's office, to have $4.7 million in edit fund reserve. We're going to fund next year about 1.2, so that still leaves 3.5 million, and we're going to get $1.8 roughly in next year. Let's not be the savings account for the citizens. Let's be responsible and keep monies in there to keep that in the black, but also let's then invest back into the cities. That's ultimately what you pay taxes for, is to receive services or investments back from a community, from your government, to make your community better. Not for us to sit on and build balances that ultimately then aren't invested just to say, look what we've done. You know what? We're perfectly timed to be able to utilize our edit funds only, no increase in taxes, and leverage that for a very good return. How we do that, that is beyond today's presentation. My job as the mayor is to, by state law, lay out plans for use of the edit funds. I chose to do it over 5 years.
And this comes back to something I actually asked you earlier today. We had it a few minutes ago, talking about any concerns about the amount of edit funds, or you have too much committed to edit long term.
No, we don't. In fact, we're conservative at all steps of the way. We budget for less than what we expend. That's how we kind of build up a reserve already. But ultimately, again, we forecast a bottom line in the black revenue, or excuse me, in the black edit funds over the next 5 years, even using millions of dollars of edit funds being around $2 million. So we will not destroy that at all. We will sustain our fiscal health and of that fund specifically, and it allows us some flexibility on emergencies. If we do need to use that for other things, it's there to use. But ultimately, it's again not letting it sit there. It's making an investment. If you don't make an investment in you yourself, you'll fail. If companies don't make investment in themselves, they fail. If cities don't make investments back in themselves, they fail miserably. And we need to do that. We have projects identified. I get asked all the time about, Mayor, how can we fund these? Or there's concern. I hope to alleviate that concern with with the ability, what I said today, we have long-term opportunities to leverage our economic development income tax fund that already exists. No change in the taxes at all. Whatever is already being paid, that's what we use, and to make a great difference in Jasper, Bradford. I'm confident. This gives me great confidence today, knowing it was done by Umbaugh & Associates, a financial advisor, knowing that the council has it in play. I fully expect people to throw darts at it, but ultimately I think what they cannot say is that we don't have the money to make a difference. We do. And how we choose to use that, what we choose to invest it in, those will be discussions that we'll have in the future. We do have economic development income tax revenue to accomplish a great deal in Jasper. And Umbaugh told us about a month ago that cities would just love to be in Jasper's position to do so, and I take that with great consideration.
We'll wrap it up with this one. You obviously, last week, kind of ties into this, you announced $50 million in investment, not exactly chump change by any means. A lot of that will probably involve some edit funds?
Yes, the council has already made a commitment last year to the Jasper Loft Phase 1. That was not part of last week's announcement. The council committed by a letter last year of roughly $500,000 in money, of which $450,000 was to come from essentially a cash source. We don't have a TIF to draw from. We have no money there. Didn't have a TIF last year. It's either edit funds or abatements. We're going to use a combination of both. Last week, the council also committed, I'm going to think $750,000 of a commitment for JOFCO or Jasper Lofts Phase 2 and Vine Street Lofts. And it's up to the mayor to work and come up with an idea how this would work. And again, it's going to involve some edit funds. The good news is we've already played this. We've already leveraged those funds. And as I'm presenting today, this is not new. The potential of the bond is not new. It's just taking that long-range forecast to be able to answer at this critical moment in time when we have all these projects coming forth that we can get things done. I don't have a financial concern. Can we do everything all at once? Can we fund multiple projects to their fullest? The answer is no. We can either be a leverage of private monies and do city funding on a portion of them or a portion of the projects, or we can adopt different projects to do greater funding. But ultimately, we can utilize our edit funds to do the projects we have, just like we've already done with the Jasper Lofts Phase 1 and the commitment that we made last week to Phase 2 and Vine Street Lofts of having other partners come on board. That $500,000 leverage on Jasper Lofts is a $13.1 million investment, 12.6 which doesn't come from the city. That's what I mean, what we can do with these other projects. So really, the answer is we've bonded, yes, in the past with the sports complex. We've also just committed last week. This is not rocket science, but ultimately people need to know, because I get questions. Can we do this, Mayor? Can we afford it? The answer is we can afford it. And the way we propose to do it, it is steady as she goes. It's being able to leverage funds that we have in the Economic Development Income Tax Fund only. That's it. That's what we use.
One more thing. So this presumes then, from what I'm hearing, that edit is preferable to you instead of bonding?
Well, there's a misconception. Bonding can come from any sources. Bonding, using of cash and reserves while maintaining it in the black, sure. But Bradford, the edit funds would be used, you'd be borrowing against the edit funds. You'd be bonding against the edit funds if you desire. That's how we paid off the sports complex. We took a multi-million-dollar bond out to build that because we wanted the cash up front. If we do that again, the edit fund is healthy enough to be able to do not just a bond, but to also sustain what we currently budget from there and still do some projects as well. And also the bond itself is an option within the edit fund. We may or may not do that. It is not exclusive of the edit fund. If we desire to, it would be paid back by edit revenue. All right, Mayor, we appreciate your time. It is. Bradford, I would say thank you. It is not easy to explain. I've lived with that. I'm trying to basically bring it down to a common level to create the confidence that without raising taxes, we can do really wonderful things in Jasper that have been described. we've already made steps to that. Let's keep going.
Well, we appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
That's been Monday with the Mayor this week. We'll be back after this.